This is Alabama Crimson Tide football recruiting on BamaInsider.com. Joined with Andrew Bone as always. My name is Trey Yanity. Thank you guys for being here another week, and obviously a big week, maybe the biggest of the entire year. Tomorrow is early signing day. For a lot of players, this is their chance to sign with the Crimson Tide or elsewhere. Really, the top names have decided the early signing day has become more of the more important signing day. So we have a lot to cover tonight, obviously. And I got to start the show by letting you guys know we will not be doing a Q&A session tonight. Typically, we take your questions, get those answered at the end. But obviously, so much to talk about tonight as we're now on early signing day eve. We're just going to get right into that, really give some predictions throughout this show and let you guys know where we think these players are going to end up. I'm not the expert. Andrew Bone is going to let you know where he thinks these players are going to end up. Guys, if you haven't gone to his Twitter yet, go follow him at Andrew Bone, at Andrew J. Bone. We're going to have updates all day long. And of course, guys, on BamaInsider.com as well, you can keep up with the early signing day. We're going to update it throughout the day. And starting at 9 a.m. tomorrow, 8 a.m. Central Time, we're going to hop on and we're going to do a live show throughout the day covering all of these signings, targets, everything else going on in this big, exciting, fun early signing day 2021. Bone, how are you doing tonight?
I'm good. I'm ready for tomorrow, ready for this week. I mean, it's it's kind of the culmination of the entire year. I mean, I think what kind of gets lost in this week is all the guys who are already committed to Alabama, guys that are going to be signing with the Tide this week. I mean, they have 21 commitments, but in my opinion, there's really probably 19 guys that are on the commitment list. I think two of those guys probably won't sign with Alabama tomorrow, but the 19 guys who I do believe will sign with Alabama, you gotta tip your hat to what Alabama's been able to bring in so far. I mean, you look on the offense side of the ball with guys like Ty Simpson and Jamarion Miller and Emmanuel Henderson, and then at the wide receiver position, just an absolutely stacked wide receiver group right now with Aaron Anderson and Kobe Prentice and Isaiah Bond. These are three Rivals 100 wide receivers. Then you have your tight end class, which is unbelievable, with Jaleel Skinner, Elijah Brown, Amari Niblack, who as we always say, Amari could also be counted as a wide receiver. I mean, he's just a sensational athlete. And then you also have your offensive line. Think about the offensive line class from last year. J.C. Latham and Tommy Brockermeyer and James Brockermeyer and Jaden Roberts and T.J. Ferguson. I mean, it was such a really deep, talented group of offensive linemen. They weren't going to take a lot of offensive linemen in this class, and they end up getting 3 offensive linemen in Dane Shore, Elijah Pridgett, one of the best offensive tackles in the country, and then Tyler Booker out of IMG Academy, who's listed as a tackle. I could easily see him end up playing guard, but you never know. What may end up happening with him. He could easily play tackle as well, but. Then the defensive side of the ball, I'm interested to see kind of how Alabama fills, some more needs tomorrow, especially on the defensive line. There's some, defensive line targets who are still out there, including Curtis Perry and Anthony Lucas. Linebacker wise, you have, a lot of guys still in play. Shamar James, Jihad Campbell, Marvin Jones Jr., and then defensive back wise, Earl Little Jr., Damani Jackson, and we'll see if there's anybody else that might pop up. But I mean, you gotta celebrate the guys that are currently committed, and you gotta celebrate, what's going to happen tomorrow. And we're here. I mean, it's time to make these final predictions. We already made a lot of predictions on BamaInsider.com today, so people have been talking about it. There's been a lot of scoop going on, so now we get a chance to talk about what we think is going to happen on Wednesday.
Yeah, no doubt about it. And like you said, it's here now. It is finally here. I know you can take a breath out at this point and really just relax a little bit, made all the phone calls, made your final predictions. Really excited to get into those tonight. And guys, I'm excited to see your comments as well. We're not going to be taking questions at the end of the show, but still get in the comment box. Let us know what you're thinking, who you think is going to sign for the Crimson Tide tomorrow. Who's a surprise? Who do you see coming out of nowhere and making the signing? And to Joseph L, man, got to give a big shout out to start out the show tonight. For the super chat, appreciate that. Any super chat helps us a lot. Anything that you can do to help the channel means a lot. So Joseph L, thank you for coming tonight. He says he sees a lot of negative reactions on Twitter and some forums about recruiting, but people just need to trust Nick Saban because he is the GOAT for a reason. I'm right there with you, Joseph L. And trust in Nick Saban, I think a lot of Alabama fans are going to do. Obviously, after 2021, one of the best recruiting classes we've ever seen. High hopes for 2022 and really high hopes for some targets tomorrow. But let's get into it. Your final predictions. Let's start on the offensive side of the ball. I'll let you pick whoever you want and kind of take it from there.
All right. I know this is what all you've been waiting on forever. So let's make some final predictions here. Now, obviously, this isn't the gospel. We don't know for sure if this is going to happen. This is, these are just my final predictions on what's going to happen on Wednesday and throughout the rest of the week. But let's start on offense. I mean, you got your quarterback in Ty Simpson. There's not going to be a second quarterback in this class. At the running back position, you got Jamarion Miller and Emmanuel Henderson. I think Alabama's finished there. Now, that doesn't mean they're not going to look in the transfer portal. I think they are going to look in the transfer portal, potentially bring somebody else in. We've talked about Jahmyr Gibbs, the Georgia Tech player that has entered the transfer portal. Now, that's somebody that we're watching pretty closely. No announcement on when he's going to make a decision, but we'll just have to kind of wait and see what happens there. Let's move to wide receiver. And as I just talked about, there's some great wide receivers in Alabama's class right now. The one guy that a lot of people have been worried about is Aaron Anderson. Is Aaron Anderson potentially going to flip to LSU? Well, the word we're getting back as of Tuesday is he is not going to flip. He is going to stick with Alabama. There was some late push from LSU. Associate head coach Frank Wilson went and saw him last week. He's a New Orleans kid, new coaching staff at LSU, with some excitement down there, for the LSU Tigers. But in the end, Aaron Anderson sticks with Alabama. He's supposed to sign early in the morning. So I believe that's around 9 a.m. We'll see Aaron Anderson. Two more receivers that are out there for Alabama. Shaz Preston, Rivals 100 wide receiver out of St. James in Louisiana. He's going to be making his decision tomorrow, I think around in the 2 p.m. hour. And I like Alabama to land Shaz Preston after he took an official visit to Alabama this past weekend. Tide has been really surging for him over the course of the last few months. I think they're going to end up getting his commitment on Wednesday. I was about to say Thursday. Wednesday. Then there's one more wide receiver who's still out there, and I kind of lump this guy into the athlete category, and that's Kendrick Law. Kendrick Law is actually going to wait until Friday to announce his decision. This is one of the best athletes in the entire country out of Shreveport. In my opinion, it has been an Alabama-Texas recruiting battle over the course of the last few months, but LSU has really come on strong over the course of the last few weeks since Brian Kelly became the head coach. He ends up taking an official visit over to LSU this past weekend. And, as of today, if I was making a prediction right now, if he was committing right now, I would predict Alabama. There's a long way away before Friday. There's so much that can happen between now and Friday. We saw that last year with Sage Ryan, in-state kid, basically had told Alabama he was coming. And I think word got out that he was going to Alabama, and all of a sudden, he ended up going back to LSU for some reason. They were able to get him back in, and he ends up sticking with LSU. But as of right now, I predict Kendrick Law to join Alabama's recruiting class, but we'll see kind of what happens over the course of the next few days. Ernest Green. This is a guy we've talked about over the course of the last, few weeks. Took an official visit to Alabama in November. Now, this was the first time that he had visited Tuscaloosa. Georgia was considered the heavy favorite for him leading up to that point. But Alabama really started to make a move with him, made a trip back to Tuscaloosa 2 weeks ago for an unofficial visit, also attended that SEC championship game. Everybody that we were talking to on the West Coast, it was all Alabama. And then all of a sudden today, we were starting to hear more Georgia with Ernest Green. And I think a lot of that has to do with his position. I think he wants to play offensive tackle. Georgia's recruited him strictly as an offensive tackle throughout the process, whereas Alabama's recruited him more just as an offensive lineman. I think he's more of a guard in college. I mean, he's a 6'5", 330-pound lineman, but could easily play tackle. I mean, this is a guy who's got great footwork, can move really well for his size. But I think Georgia has, in my opinion, probably moved ahead of Alabama this late in the process. He is going to sign on Wednesday. He's not going to announce his commitment. He's going to hold off until January the 8th when he announces at the All-American Bowl. But as of right now, I'll predict Ernest Green to Georgia. Now, tight end wise, there is one tight end in Alabama's commitment list who took a visit last weekend, and that's Jaleel Skinner. Jaleel Skinner, out of IMG Academy, originally from Greer High School in South Carolina. He committed to Alabama this summer. Has been pretty solid with his commitment ever since. Mario Cristobal ended up making a in-home visit with him last week. Well, not really an in-home visit, but went to IMG Academy, visited with him, got him to take an official visit to Miami this weekend. He went down there, told Alabama beforehand that he was going down there, so this wasn't just some surprise visit, and it caught Alabama off guard. Alabama knew all about this visit before it happened. Well, comes back from the visit, says he's going to announce that final decision or sign on Friday. I don't think there's anything to worry about with Jaleel Skinner. I think he's 100% Alabama. And this is obviously, he's a commitment, but it's also a recruiting win. When you're able to keep kids on board, especially elite kids like Jaleel Skinner, when they take these last-minute official visits to other schools, and you're able to still keep them on board, that's a huge recruiting win, regardless if they're committed or not. So that's kind of a look on the offensive side of the ball, where things stand. And, like I said, as of right now, predicting Shaz Preston, Kendrick Law to Alabama, and Jaleel Skinner to stick, and then Ernest Green, I will be predicting him to Georgia.
Yeah, I like it all the way around there. Some excellent predictions. And guys, Andrew Bone is the industry standard. He is the leader in this industry. Like I said, go follow him on Twitter at Andrew J. Bone. He's going to be updating you throughout the day. We are here on Bama Insider as well. Talk about Ernest Green. Maybe going to Georgia there, but some Bama wide receivers that they could use in this 22 class as well. And Shaz Preston and Kendrick Law. Going to be a really, really fun day tomorrow. And guys, we got 419 of you in here finding out about what's going to happen, putting your predictions in the comment box as well. That means we need 419 likes. But hey, just being here means a lot for our channel. Share this video, help us get out into the algorithm, and help us keep you updated on all things recruiting and Alabama football. Some excellent predictions there on the offensive side of the football, and a lot of big time targets on that side, but some pretty big names on the defensive side as well. Damani Jackson for one. Let's talk about the other side, the defense here. Some of these targets, some guys that are committed. What do you expect to happen tomorrow? Predictions round number 2 here for Andrew Bone.
Yeah. I know it's probably the group that everybody's kind of been wondering about what's going to happen on the defensive front tomorrow. Well, one big signee that I expect for Alabama tomorrow is Jaheim Otis, big lineman from Mississippi. He's your 6'6", 350+ pound lineman that is very good, and somebody that I believe has got a chance to be a special player down in Tuscaloosa. There was a lot of interest in him from the Mississippi schools. He visited Ole Miss and Mississippi State multiple times. There was a lot of chatter that he was going to flip, but took that official visit to Alabama this weekend. I don't think there's anything to worry about. I think Jaheim Otis is going to stick with his commitment to Alabama. So I think you got to chalk that one up as a victory as well. There's 2 defensive linemen who are out there that we're all talking about over the course of the last few weeks, really longer than that, a few months. Are these guys going to end up in Alabama's class? And, the first one, Curtis Perry, in-state defensive lineman from Pike Road High School in Alabama. You never know what may happen at the last minute, but I have said for a long time that I believe he's going to end up in Alabama's recruiting class. I still feel that way. He came out and said that Auburn was his favorite after attending the Iron Bowl, and we've seen some tweets about Auburn on his social media the last few weeks, but I just don't expect him to commit to Auburn. I think Alabama is in great shape with Curtis Perry. Nick Saban, has really made him a top priority. This is, everybody talks about how he's a little bit undersized, and yeah, I mean, he's not your prototypical 6'4", 290-pound defensive lineman, but he also recorded 23 sacks during his senior season. So, he's a highly productive lineman. I think he's got a chance to really develop into a great player. And this is somebody that Alabama's been excited about for a long time. I mean, they really like him a lot, and I think he's one of the top players, not only in the state but in the entire country. Anthony Lucas. This is a guy that visited Tuscaloosa twice during the month of November. He also visited A&M twice during the fall. there's been all this talk that it's Alabama A&M, and this has been going on for probably the last couple months. But I think there's some other schools that have strongly been in it that nobody's been talking about, and that's UCLA and Notre Dame. And even though Notre Dame lost its head coach Brian Kelly to LSU, and the guy who's been recruiting Anthony Lucas, really kind of throughout the whole process was Marcus Freeman. So Marcus Freeman becomes the head coach at Notre Dame. I think there's a very legit chance that he could end up at Notre dame. Could he end up at Texas A&M? Possibly. Alabama, as of right now, I'm not predicting him to Alabama. I think he's right now, I would predict him to either Notre Dame or Texas A&M. Probably leaning, even though everybody thinks he's going to A&M, I'm probably leaning a little bit to Notre Dame. I think they're starting to get some traction this late in the process. So it's probably my prediction right now. I could be wrong, but I don't think he's going to A&M. I mean, I don't think he's going to Alabama. So kind of your defensive. There's not really a lot of defensive line targets that are still out there for Alabama. What Alabama fans need to know is the 2023 class is about the deepest, most talented class of defensive linemen that I've ever seen. And I'm going next year will be my 19th year of covering recruiting. It might be the most talented I've ever seen. And I think Alabama's really going to load it. They're going to have to. I mean, they're really going to have to load up on the defensive line next year if they only sign 3 defensive linemen in this year's class. So I do think they're going to look in the portal. I think they're going to go after, a big name or two that's going to enter the portal. But I also think you really load up on next year's recruiting class on the defensive front. I mean, as you said, as PH says, Peter Woods. Yeah, I mean, he's certainly a big target for Alabama early in the process. There's a lot of really good defensive linemen in the state of Alabama next year. I mean, it is absolutely stacked. So I think they're going to be focused more on the 2023 class as of right now. Let's go to linebacker-wise. There's 3 guys. There's really 4 guys, but 3 guys that we're kind of tracking that we've been talking about more than anyone else. And I'll talk about the first guy, and that's Shamar James. In-state linebacker, 5-star recruit from Faith Academy. Early on in the process, looked like Alabama was the favorite for him. Ends up committing to Florida, shocking a lot of people. And then ends up decommitting from Florida. Took a couple visits to Tuscaloosa, has visited Georgia during the season, and then was in Athens this past weekend for his official visit. I do not think he's going to predict. I don't think he is going to go to Alabama. I think he's going to Georgia or Florida. Florida has really kind of surged over the course of the last week, even though with the coaching change, it went back down to Gainesville, and they've really come on strong. I'd probably be shocked if it's not Georgia, but there is some chatter about Florida here late in the process. But as of right now, my prediction on him is it's not going to be Alabama. I know that probably upsets some Alabama fans just because he's a elite linebacker. You want a great linebacker, but guess what? Alabama has a great linebacker class. Shamar James may not be coming, but you have Sean Murphy, who's a 5-star linebacker. You have Jeremiah Alexander, who's a 5-star. These are 2 elite football players. And then I do think they are going to land Jihad Campbell tomorrow out of IMG Academy. I am predicting Jihad Campbell to Alabama. And this is kind of one of these late surprises for Alabama because he made a trip to Tuscaloosa last weekend. Was only in town for 1 day. Everybody says, well, how do you get a guy committed if he only visits once? Well, think back to the COVID year last year. There was a lot of guys in Alabama's class. Of course, they couldn't really control it, but there was a lot of guys in Alabama's class last year who never even visited Alabama. At least he made a 1-day trip to Alabama, and then he took a visit over to Texas A&M on Saturday and Sunday. But as of right now, I am predicting Jihad Campbell to Alabama. This is a 6'3", 235-pound linebacker that I think is one of the best in the country. Is originally from New Jersey. But transferred down to IMG Academy this year and had a great season down there. And obviously, if he ends up committing to Alabama, would join Tyler Booker and Jaleel Skinner. So that would be 3 IMG Academy players if they're able to get Jihad Campbell tomorrow, which I am predicting him to the Tide. Now, Aniyah White, He's an edge rusher, outside linebacker from Philadelphia. Alabama's been in the race for him for a while, but I think he's going to Texas A&M. Hasn't been back to Tuscaloosa and really since the summer. So I think he's going to Texas A&M, and they've been the favorite for him. It isn't some major surprise or anything like that, but I think he's going to end up going to Texas A&M, and I think he's announcing his commitment tomorrow. Marvin Jones Jr., the 5-star edge rusher out of American Heritage High School in Plantation, Florida. Teammate Earl Little Jr., he's going to be making an announcement tomorrow too. So big day for those two guys. Been a lot of talk over the last, really over the last 48 hours on Georgia. I was really ready to predict Georgia for him and ready to put in a future cast for him. I'm not there yet. I think there has been a lot of conversations this afternoon with Alabama. I think his family really likes Alabama a lot. I'm telling you guys, he's been talking to Alabama a good bit. And he's been talking to Georgia. I mean, he's talking to Florida State. I mean, this is a guy that I feel like could end up going to Alabama. I'm not ready to make a prediction on him to Georgia just yet. I think Alabama's in it. I think I don't think he's going to go to Florida State, even though his family or his father is a Florida State legend. I don't think he's going to go there. I think it's going to be Alabama or Georgia tomorrow. He's going to be announcing around. I think he's announcing around 3:40 p.m. Can see it going either way. I know there's a lot of confidence on the Georgia side. Everybody's predicting that, but I would not be shocked if it's Alabama at all. That's kind of our late night nugget there. Watch for Marvin Jones Jr. tomorrow. I think he's very much in play for the Crimson Tide. So that's kind of it right there at the linebacker position. Now let's talk about defensive backs. Now I'll get it out of the way early. I think Damani Jackson's going to USC. I think the writing's been on the wall, the last week or so. Better day, a couple of his teammates are going to be going to USC. I think Alabama did a really good job recruiting him, but this is a kid who grew up wanting to play for USC. Always been a USC fan, and it was going to take a big hire and probably a little bit of a big enough hire that had some coaching stability to come in and make a big splash for him to potentially go back to USC and his commitment. You don't see that often. You don't see kids decommit and then recommit. We've seen it at Alabama a little bit. We saw that with Trey Sanders, saw that with Evan Neal, Xavier McKinney. There have been some guys who have ended up back in Alabama's class who decommitted at some point. So this isn't just a completely rare thing. But as of right now, I do think Damani Jackson ends up signing with USC. Earl Little Jr. This is one of my favorite guys in the. I was about to say in Alabama's class. He's not in Alabama's class yet, but he's a guy that I've really liked a lot throughout the entire process. I think he's, very versatile. I think he's one of the best defensive backs in the country, and definitely has a chance to be a big time player in Tuscaloosa. Now, Alabama has been pressing for Earl Little for a very long time. He started getting recruited when he was a sophomore by Alabama. I saw all these different rumors over the course of the last few months that he wasn't a take for the Crimson Tide, and it was just a bunch of BS. I think it was more people in Florida throwing that out there because they were hoping that that he would end up staying in the Sunshine State with Florida State and Miami coming on strong. But in the end, I like Earl Little Jr. to Alabama. So it's going to be an interesting day because, obviously there's still some guys that are out there. Some people have asked me about Denver Harris and if anything, could potentially happen there. I don't think anything's going to happen with him necessarily this week. I think it's definitely something that Alabama can revisit and kind of wait and see if he ends up signing. There's some talk that he may not sign this week, that he may wait until February. So that's somebody that I think Alabama could go after. But one thing to remember is, Alabama and every other school in the country can go and recruit in the transfer portal. There's a lot of elite guys that enter the transfer portal. It's not just scrubs. It's not just people that are can't crack the starting lineup. You look at what Alabama's been able to do. In recent years, Landon Dickerson, Henry To'oTo'o Jamison Williams. I mean, these are difference makers. These are guys who can, contribute right away. I think Alabama's going to look at, there for offensive linemen. I think they're going to look there for, another running back. I think, defensive line, they can look for somebody. So these are, the recruiting cycle isn't over because these high school kids make their decision. Recruiting cycle can still go on with this transfer portal. So, are you looking for somebody that, these last few spots, are you looking for somebody that may take a couple years to develop? Or are you looking for somebody that can potentially come right in, make a big contribution right off the bat? And I think that's something that kind of gets lost in the shuffle. So Alabama's certainly going to look in the transfer portal. They've hit some home runs there in recent years. I think they're going to hit some more home runs this year. So keep in mind, they're going to be looking in the transfer portal. But just to kind of recap, I mean, my predictions, heading into tomorrow, I think Alabama gets Shaz Preston. I think they're going to end up getting Earl Little Jr. I think they're going to end up getting Curtis Perry. I really like their chances with who else we're talking about? Kendrick Law. We're starting to forget who all we're predicting in Alabama's class. But I mean, obviously, I think things are going to go really well for Alabama on Wednesday, and it's going to be a busy day for everybody who's watching the show tonight. You got to get on this show tomorrow. We are going to have an all-day event on our Bama Insider YouTube channel starting at 8 a.m. tomorrow morning. We got guests lined up, commitments. Let me tell you something. We have Ty Simpson coming on the show tomorrow, and he has already packed his bags. He's going to be in Tuscaloosa come Thursday to start practicing with the team. This is Alabama's quarterback signee tomorrow. So, I mean, it's going to be an exciting day. I mean, like I said, I think Alabama's going to close really strong on offense, with guys like Shaz Preston. Kendrick Law, like I said, is going to announce his commitment on Friday. And then, looking on the defensive side of the ball, I think Curtis Perry, Earl Little Jr., Jahia Campbell. And like I said, don't rule out Marvin Jones Jr. We're watching Marvin Jones really closely I'm going to say it, as we kind of get into the witching hour. Witching hour is my favorite thing on the NFL Red Zone. So this is the witching hour of recruiting. Recruiting never stops. I mean, somebody posted on Twitter the other day, I think it was one of our rivals analysts said, we're now in the dead period where recruiting really begins. And that is 100% fact, because so much recruiting goes on, so many conversations, so many ups and downs. I mean, we saw that a few years ago. I mean, a few years ago, we were talking about how Trey Sanders was going to Georgia the night before signing day. We were talking about how, Terry and Arnold was going to Georgia. We were talking about all these different kids, and then bam, signing day happens. These kids go to Alabama. So there's going to be some surprises tomorrow. There's going to be some, guys that Alabama misses on. There's going to be some guys that Alabama ends up, locking down. I think it's going to be a great day for Alabama. I certainly expect Alabama at the end of the day to have a top 3 recruiting class. Will it be number 1? I don't know about that. Will it be number 2? I don't know. A lot kind of depends on how these other classes end up closing, Georgia and Texas A&M. But I think they're going to be in the top 3, and I think Alabama fans are going to be extremely excited with the end result. And we'll talk about after tomorrow, after Friday, when some of these other guys make their final decisions, we'll be talking about who Alabama still has available that they can recruit all the way up until February, because there's going to still be some guys that are out there. They're going to, like I said, they're going to start looking in the transfer portal, but it's going to be a big, big day for Alabama fans, Alabama coaches, and Alabama commitments, because it's the early signing period where we see a lot of these guys make their commitments, make their final decisions. And, like I said, just keep it hanging on to all these guys that we're looking around. That's big, but also adding some more talent on Wednesday and potentially Friday, with Kendrick Law waiting until Friday to announce. It's going to be a big week for the Crimson Tide.
It is going to be a huge week. It's going to be a huge day tomorrow, not just for the Crimson Tide, but on BamaInsider.com as well. And like Bone said, guys, we're going to have coverage all day long. I see you guys get in the comments, getting excited about Marvin Jones Jr., the potential that he could come to Alabama. Bring that energy tomorrow. We're going to be with you all day. We are going to have Ty Simpson on live at some point on the show, along with so many other great interviews throughout the day. And of course, our videos breaking down each of these commitments, each of these signings, rather, as they happen tomorrow during early signing day. Guys, thank you so much for joining us tonight, getting in those comments, bringing the energy. And as we close it out tonight, Bone, I just want your final thoughts on the lead up to all of this, the recruitment process, really just this fall, and kind of how you're doing at the end of all this. I know it's been an incredibly busy time.
Yeah, I mean, you try to gather as much info as you possibly can. We don't just talk to people on, the Alabama side of things. You're talking to, people on every single side that's covered, these kids for a very long time. Whether that's a national recruiting analyst, regional guy who covers Georgia, a guy who covers Notre Dame. You're talking to all these guys trying to fill out, what's going on their end and try to piece everything together. It's been a fun recruiting cycle. It's been good to kind of get back into the groove of things after last year when you had the COVID year with no official visits, no camps, no in-home visits for Coach Saban. So this year we've we started working again, and it's been fun. But I think for the most part, Alabama fans should be really excited about its recruiting class. There's so many top kids that they were able to get early on in the process. I think they hit a home run, especially at the wide receiver position and tight end position. We've never really talked too much about tight ends. I mean, they land some good tight ends, and some guys end up being better than what many probably expected. But this is a very, very good tight end class. I think probably one of the best tight end, probably the best tight end class in the Saban era that they've been able to sign with Nee Black and Elijah Brown and Jaleel Skinner. I mean, I think that's certainly going to contend for the top tight end class in the Saban era. So it's going to be exciting. Going to be a fun day tomorrow, and we're certainly looking forward to seeing how it all unfolds. And I think Alabama fans are too. I think everybody's on the edge of their seat.
It is here. This is early signing day eve, early signing day coming tomorrow. And guys, thank you all for being here again. Wayne, I see you in the comments down there, all our favorites. Join us tomorrow, 8 a.m. Central Time. We're going to be with you bright and early. But before then, guys, go to BamaInsider.com. Check out our current commitment list. Look at those guys who we expect to see sign with the Crimson Tide tomorrow. And go to Twitter. Find @AndrewJBone on there as well. Hear about some targets, some other guys that we expect to see maybe potentially sign with the Crimson Tide tomorrow. But regardless, guys, it's time to get excited. It is finally here after all the lead up. Early signing day 2021. Thank you guys for joining us tonight. Hit that like button on your way out and subscribe to the channel if you haven't done so already. For Andrew Bone, my name is Trey Yannity. This has been Alabama Football Recruiting on BamaInsider.com. Have a great night, everybody. Roll Tide.